So welcome to another session in the series that we've been calling Career Intelligence, especially for the cybersecurity program and other people looking to make a career change. So I'm very happy to have Mr. Chuck Saia today with us. He's a very distinguished QU alum. He has an MBA from QU. He, in his career path at Deloitte, is a senior partner at Deloitte. He's also on the board of trustees at Quinnipiac. So he's done a tremendous amount in his career. And what caught my attention was his new book called You Got This Kid, Words of Advice for Young Leaders. And it's one of those books I think that can be a catalyst for you if you're trying to make a career change. And, you know, many of us in this unfortunate era of the pandemic are, you know, looking for new ways to reinvent ourselves and new paths and things like that. So welcome, Chuck.
Well, thank you, Fred. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be a part of this conversation today, and any chance I get to talk about the book and to mention the most important thing, that all proceeds go to lupus research and environmental sustainability, two things that are important to me and my family. Lupus research, because my sister-in-law, Amy, suffers from the disease, as well as many of the people that are on the board of directors of our foundation, the You Got This Kid Leadership Foundation, and environmental sustainability, because removing toxins from the environment helps people with autoimmune diseases. So I always make a case to say, look, there's a book, but when you purchase the book, you're actually helping our cause, because all the proceeds go to those things. And just creating this awareness with you today, just by making those opening comments, is so important to me. So thank you for having me, Fred.
Yeah, and just to add to that, so the book you can get on Amazon, and the foundation, I looked it up, it's yougotThisKid.org, right? For people who want to find out more about the foundation and take part in it as well. So
that's right.
But back to the book. So it says advice for young leaders, but a lot of the people in the cyber program are mid-career people. They've been in IT or they've been in business. They want to make a career change. So how do you see this? Do the comments that you have, I think, 7 nuggets. I call them nuggets of information. I like to think in terms of nuggets. How do you see, if you're making a career change, which one of these would you start with first? Or how would you sort of use this as a tool to catalyze a career change and either up or into a new field?
Yeah, well, first off, and as you and I have talked in the past, Fred, the book was not intended to be just for young people. In fact, I set forth to make the book short. It's short, which I thought was important, because leaders have limited amount of time, but also memorable and fun. And the memorable and fun piece is I use animal analogies to compare the corporate jungle to the animal kingdom, if you will. And there's 2 sections, very important 2 sections. One, leadership and life, really, it's about you. But unfortunately, it's also not all about you. So there's 2 sections, it's about you and it's not all about you. And one of the animal analogies, I think, highlights how it's not just intended for young leaders. There's analogy in the It's About You section where I talk about an egg going to butterfly. And I talk about the difficulty in the animal kingdom of getting from egg to butterfly. Only 10% actually make it to flight. And that's not much different in the corporate world. Only 10% make it to the highest levels of leadership. But in that section, and in all sections, we have drawings. I had an art illustrator, an intern that I used from the New School in New York City, and she drew a caterpillar. And under the caption of that caterpillar eating a leaf, it says, "Stay hungry." And in that messaging, when you think about it's all about you, you have to stay hungry. You have to continuously try and improve yourself as a leader and as a professional. And the top leaders that I've given this book to, CEOs, board members, when I hand them the book, they don't look at it and say, oh, this is for a young leader, not me. They hand it down. No, instead, they consume the information, because they really understand that they perhaps haven't even made it to flight yet, that they have to continuously do self-discovery to learn. So the book is applicable to anyone from a very senior leader to someone, even in the grade school level, where through our foundation, we're talking to kids in K through 12 about the book and some of the lessons from a life perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting that you've given it to people that might be in mid-career, already achieved a lot, and they'll say, hey, I can do, maybe I'm not at, I can do more. So I totally agree with that. And so you, in the book, I think you have 3 nuggets for sort of about you, sort of inner focused, and then I think you have 4 focused on the outside world. These really interplay with each other, isn't that? I mean, I think you can't really do the 3 like your secret sauce. You can't do that in isolation. You kind of have to be addressing the outer world at the same time. Would you agree? Or how do you see the 2 spheres overlapping or interacting or sustaining each other?
Yeah, the way I see it, Fred, is that it is all about you. You have to understand that piece first. You have to go through self-discovery and self-exploration. There's 3 stories you mentioned. One is about a mandarin duck, and that's meant to indicate your special sauce, what makes you special, looking deep inside yourself to understand what gives you your brand of authentic, your brand of special. The second is about your thick skin. What gives you your thick skin? Leadership is a contact sport. So it's a story of an armadillo, and it talks about the need for thick skin. And then the last one is about the butterfly, as we just talked about, which is continuously improving yourself. If you can't get that right, you can't even start to think about the things that are what are outside of your control or less in your control, which are stories about things like scorpion managers that might be attacking you, the need for a team, the need for mentors, the need to embrace diversity.
Right. So yeah, so if you don't have your story down, then you're not going to get anywhere out in the outside world. You're not even going to get to first base. But I have another question about that. Do you think sort of is the pandemic and post-pandemic world changing things? Somehow it seems like everything is way more accelerated. So I know you mentioned mentors that you had and also mentees that you have had and currently have. Do you think that the speed and sort of disconnected nature of life is changing things, or do people need to emphasize other areas in interacting with people, given the sort of upended world that we have these days? So
yeah, as I think about your audience, I think about security officers or people that are in the cyber world.
Yeah.
And the importance in that world, the impact that a risk, the realization of a risk in that world can have. We like to say cyber has an impact from the lowest level employee all the way to the boardroom. And in order to manage those risks and respond to those risks, you have to have the right team in place. It's not all about you section. As you know, I write stories of dolphins and how dolphins have helped save the lives of surfers in 2 instances. One, they surround one surfer, true stories, and don't let sharks come in for an attack. And another story where one surfer got bit by a shark, the dolphins bring that individual to shore. And then stories of how dolphins team, sometimes better than humans. And if you've ever been through a crisis, a cyber attack, which has a brand impact on your particular organization or the organization that you might be going to, you understand the value of team. And it's not just your core team. It's all of the stakeholders. So it's the lowest level of employee that's been impacted all the way to the boardroom in this case, including your outside influencers, regulators, the FBI, and people that you need to touch base with. And in this world of isolation, in this world of Zoom, understanding team, doing things like wargaming in a very different way to make sure that the team, not just the core team, is able to respond to those types of those type of attacks. I think that bring that dolphin story to life even in a greater way.
Yeah, exactly. So you talk about packs and sort of hostile work environments and things like that. But so what you really want to do is find a environment where you can thrive, right? Friendly work environment, or supportive, I guess is maybe a better word. So how would you suggest people go about looking for that kind of environment? And do you create it yourself in a bigger organization by seeking out mentors in other parts of the group? Or how do you develop that?
Yeah, so I say in the book, and I still believe this, my favorite story is about the Eagles, which is a story about the Eagle mom, which is a story about mentorship.
Yeah.
And it's the only story where I use editorial freedom. Every other animal story is a true story, but
Okay.
in the Eagle story, I use editorial freedom because, as you may know, anyone that understands the animal kingdom in depth, that an eagle mom usually lays two eggs. One egg hatches before the other. As a result, one of the eaglets, one of the chicks, starts to grow faster than the next, and eventually sibling rivalry happens, and one eagle kills off another eagle. And not in my nest, not in my eagle's nest, not in Alaska. And that is because my eagle mom feeds both chicks. She understands the value of feeding both individuals so that one day she could sit back and watch both individuals soar. So I often tell people that's the type of culture that you want to be a part of. You want to be part of a mission that you can hold on to, but you also want to be a part of a culture where there are eagle moms feeding you so that they're mentoring you so that you can grow as an individual and one day you can soar. The other thing I would point out that brings you back to It's About You is I talk about the Mandarin duck and your special sauce. And in part of that chapter, what happens is the Mandarin duck, again, a true story, winds up leaving that pond. And what I suggest in that chapter is that if your special sauce, if your brand of authenticity is not something that is accepted in the pond that you're swimming in, leave the pond. That's one thing you do have in control. So if you're not getting the right mentorship, if you don't feel like you're part of the right team, you can fly and leave the pond until you find a place that appreciates your brand of special.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think I didn't know about real eagles, so I read your book and I thought, yes, the way I interpret it is that you want to be a manager, you want to make sure everybody's heard, but at the same time, you want to be in a group where that culture is valued and, and that's happening, right? So that's super important. Yeah, the duck, I read the story of the duck was in New York City and left and hadn't been seen. And I looked to see if there were any updates, but the duck, I don't know where the duck went. So
Has not come back.
yeah, it's a very, very engaging story. So what other is there a starting point for this book? Let's say a number of our students are in information technology in one way, shape, or form. They want to move into security. Is there sort of a roadmap? I know the book is short, which is good, so you can read it in a couple of hours. Is there a starting point that would you start at chapter 1 and go to the last chapter, or how would you use it as a tool to catalyze a career move?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that it does progress. So it purposely starts in that section of It's About You. But before I even get there, I talk about the story, Fred, of me and my dad in a boat together. And I talk about the fact that, we're on the Delaware River. And for those of you that haven't never been on the Delaware River, it's a magnificent place where there's, I describe it with deer and bear and foxes and coyotes, and there's eagles and hawks above. And the reason my dad and I were often there is because of the fishing holes. I described Dingman's Ferry, where it's about a mile stretch wide, but in order to get to the best fishing holes, my dad and I would have to get through this very narrow gap. And one day he came to me and he asked that I drive through that gap. And he, in essence, gave me the keys to the boat. Now, that's sort of a joke because it was a boat with it was an outboard motor and it was only 15 feet. And it was, I like to say it was a tin can in the water. But to get through this treacherous space, I needed his mentorship to get me through that. He guided me that day to get through my first entry point, my passage upstream. And in that story, what I'm impressing upon people is the importance of mentorship, the importance of having people that can guide you. So I purposely start there before you even start to think about It's About You, and then going into It's Not All About You section. The other thing I would say to students, especially in cyber, in the School of Engineering, where, by the way, my son is going to study to be an engineer, my youngest. You're going to be taught hard skills. And you're going to be fantastic coming from our great school of Quinnipiac with hard skills. Don't ever lose sight of the soft skills that are needed in life and in business. And the book is really intended to teach you some of the soft skills that you otherwise might not get because you're so focused on the hard skills right now. And that is what I would suggest to students that are thinking about whether they want to read the book or not.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. So I think the first point is sort of navigating difficult areas, right, to find the good fishing hole or find the kind of a career outcome that you want. And then I think the soft skills thing is just super important. And so I love that you kind of capsulize the book, I guess, with making sure people keep that top of mind, I guess, right? So
yeah, I mean, Fred, you and I know that the CISO is in the boardroom now, right? Yeah. The chief technology officer or the chief legal officer, depending on where the CISO reports within a given organization, they bring the CISO to the boardroom. And the CISO is not going to the boardroom and talking about the technical aspects of cyber, right? Yeah. They need to talk at a level where they embrace their soft skills to educate the board on the cyber posture of an organization, or educate the board on where they are in a given brand attack or a cyber attack that's creating a brand attack. So it is great to have those hard skills when you first make that entry point, because we as employers need that. But over time, you need to work on your leadership skills, which generally are the soft skills.
Yeah, and I think my experience is you can never learn enough about those soft skills. You have to keep learning them. So I think it's great that you wrote the book and have spent the time with us talking about it. And I look forward to talking to you another time or meeting you up, hopefully on campus when you're up here, hopefully soon. So,
well, thank you, Fred. And again, I really appreciate it, because it goes back to the reason that I wrote it, which at the end of the day was to drive money so that we could do lupus research, environmental sustainability. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thanks so much, Chuck.